Welcome to Feral Folktales with me, Papa G. These bonus episodes are where I share the shorter tales, the ones that sit between the full stories on the Feral Folklorist. And if you're new to me, don't miss the main podcast. That's where the 30-minute hauntings and deeper folklore take shape. And today's folktale is Grýla and the Yule Lads. In the northern valleys, people didn't talk lightly about what waited in the mountains once winter settled in. They said the high ridges hid things older than anyone's memory. Folks didn't pretend Grýla was a rumor. They spoke of her the way you talk about a danger you respect. Some said she was a giantess, others that she was a troll, who only came down when the season reached its hardest stretch, and people believed she noticed households that had slipped behind. She wasn't the only one they worried about. Grýla had 13 sons, known everywhere as the Yule Lads. Their names changed a little from farm to farm, but the story stayed steady. Each lad had a habit he watched for: stealing food, checking pans, testing doors, tapping at windows, or slipping into barns to see how the animals were kept. People claimed the lads traveled ahead of their mother. If they found a family careless with chores or wasteful with food, they stayed close. If the trouble grew bad enough, that was when Grýla herself paid attention. One winter, a family at the edge of the valley found themselves behind on more tasks than they cared to admit. The storms came early, and the cold deepened before they caught up. The sheep pens needed shoring. The pantry needed tightening. They meant to do it, but one day kept turning into the next. The first sign something was wrong showed up at night. A spoon went missing from the kitchen. The next evening, the door latch hung loose. No break-in, no theft, just loose. The father fixed it, and without comment. Folks in the valley didn't ignore details like that, especially in December. Then the children found a heel of bread missing from a closed box. Not chewed, taken. The mother looked at the floor and saw a small spot of mud that didn't match their boots. She didn't raise her voice or frighten the children. She simply said they needed to get ahead of their chores before things worsened. Everyone in that house understood what she meant without saying the name. The third night came with no wind at all. Quiet in a way that makes people listen a little bit harder. The father heard a slow scrape along the outer wall, the kind that told him someone was checking the boards one by one. He waited, then stepped outside. The yard looked empty. But when he turned towards the barn, he saw a thin shape at the doorway. Not tall like a grown man, long-limbed, standing still, as if deciding whether to step inside. He didn't shout, he didn't move closer. He held his lantern high enough to see the snow in front of the barn, and that was where he noticed the tracks. They were narrow, not shaped like boots. They looked almost like someone walked with feet too long for their body. People in the valley recognized prints like that. They said each Yule lad had its own way of stepping, and no two sets of tracks matched. Before he could say anything, the shape slipped away into the dark. When he checked the barn entrance, he found a small wooden peg lying on the ground. It was the kind used to secure feed bins. Their own bin had been left open earlier that day. That peg made the meaning clear. One of the lads had checked their work. In the old traditions, a family had one way to make the Yule Lads leave. They had to show the house was in good order before dawn. Not just rush chores, true readiness. That meant tightening the pins, closing the containers, sorting the pantry, sweeping the floors, and placing a plate of plain food outside the door just before daylight, not as a gift, as a sign the home was managed and no one inside was careless. The family worked through the night. The father fixed the pins, the mother cleaned the kitchen and sealed their food properly. The children swept from one end of the house to the other. When the sky turned pale, they set a plate of simple porridge on the step and waited. The yard stayed still. No footsteps, no scraping. When the father opened the door at sunrise, the bowl sat untouched except for one small dent in the porridge, as if a finger had pressed into it lightly and lifted away. Folks said each lad checked the food differently. That mark meant they'd looked it over and decided the household was no longer their concern. Nothing strange happened after that. No missing bread, no loose latches, no tracks. The family stayed on top of their winter work, and the neighbors didn't have to ask quiet questions anymore. People in the valley understood what the signs meant. The Yule Lads weren't just mischief makers. They were winter inspectors, making sure families didn't waste food or fall behind in a season that could take more than it gave. And Grýla? Folks believe she only bothered with homes where the lads found real neglect. If a family showed they were paying attention, she stayed in the mountains where she belonged. Stories about Grýla and the Yule Lads came from households trying to make sense of long, hungry winters. People didn't picture them as creatures waiting to pounce. They pictured them as reminders that winter rewarded steady hands. A family that kept things in order felt safer, and a family that let things slip felt exposed. The lads had personalities because that is how people explained the strange little things that happen in dark months. Missing food, shifted tools, animals acting uneasy. Giving each lad a habit made those moments easier to read. It turned winter problems into something you could understand and respond to. Grýla's world was simple in those old beliefs. If a house ignored every warning, she was the figure people imagined at the end of the road. Not as a monster creeping around farms, but as the final sign that a family had stopped paying attention during a season that did not forgive neglect. I'm Papa G, and this is Feral Folktales. Until next time.